Lisa Daly and Lori Goodwin are the Recovering Preacher's Kids. Grab a coffee and a snack and sit back and join the conversation as we discuss counting it all joy through the hardships of life.
Welcome back to the very next season of the Recovering Preacher's Kids podcast. Lisa and I have prayed about what the next topic is to bring. And in a world where it is easy to, almost have to contain yourself to keep from throat punching somebody, we can choose to find joy in the world. And I don't know about y'all, but sometimes you have to really hunt. You have to really look for joy. And I have recently been walking through a season where I am learning that um, things that I thought were a certain way kind of aren't. And I've struggled a little bit with trying to find joy and peace in those moments. And so it kind of started the conversation between me and Lisa about grief and about different types of grief, that there's grief from maybe the loss of a relationship or the end of a marriage, or maybe the loss of a home from a fire or tornado or whatever. And we all walk through different types of grief. And today we are bringing you a story of someone that is walking through grief from the loss of her child. And so we are excited to have a guest with us today. And y'all just go ahead, grab a cup of coffee, get your little snacky snack, and sit down and get ready to listen to Denise's story today.
Well, I'm going to introduce a little bit about Denise because she's the mom of my most favorite son-in-law there is. He's just absolutely perfect. Her son Cody's married to my daughter Lauren, and we share two of the most precious grandchildren. They are. I know everybody thinks their grandchildren are precious, but these two are very special to us and precious, especially when we got to go spend some time with them today. So I'm very thankful that my life crossed over with Denise, and Lauren and I laughed that several times that we lived 45 minutes away, and her and Cody never met each other until they both went to school in Monroeville at Alabama Southern, and that's where they met. So all these years we've been living close together and never ran into each other. But the story that Denise is willing to share with us today is one that is just I don't even know how to describe it, of how God's taken something so hard and tragic and unfolded it for her in a way that has brought to some form of healing. I would say, Denise, to some extent. Um, I'm just going to let you just start if you want to. Tell us a little bit about Corgan and and just kind of his story a little bit.
Corrigan, I could go on and on about how proud that Sean and I were of him. We didn't realize until after he had passed away and he was at UAB going through all the testing and the organ retrieval, just how loved by so many people that he was. We knew he had his close best friends, the brothers, the ones that never left his side at the hospital, slept on floors, had to be run off every day. And we had people reached out to us that we've never met. We had one young man that reached out to us and told us that because of Corrigan, he didn't commit suicide. He came to his funeral. We met him, and we have gained a lot of relationships and a lot of new children. and and to have our community support us the way that they did was, we've never seen anything like it. Our family were a lot. lot closer. They have been so supportive. Um, but Corrigan was just, he always wanted to just make a difference, even in school, from being a special education aide, to while he was going to college in Mobile playing baseball. He wanted to be a little league baseball coach. He just wanted to make a difference. Um, but his friends always labeled him as the one that was always there no matter what, the one that they could always rely on. And his purpose in life was just to make everybody happy. Um, he was a good boy. He really was. And even when he moved home and got his first big boy job, the corporate at IP did nothing but brag on him between, his willingness to go that extra mile, to his work ethic and wanting to learn. And they were really good to us after he had passed away. And um, I could just go on and on. Corrigan has just made us very proud. And and even in death, he is just still changing lives and doing great things. So,
And I think sometimes that we I guess we don't get to see that side of after death, kind of the other side of it. And he donated, was it 5 organs? Was it 5? Is
yes,
that right?
he donated his heart, both his kidneys, his liver, and his corneas, his eyes.
Um well, I know you have a special story the of the heart, of where his heart went. And when since you explained a little bit of who Corgan was and his personality, um, and just his giving, that the story of the young man that received his heart was just very touching. So why don't you tell us a little bit of how that came about, of y'all connecting with their family and his story on his heart?
Well, when you go through the process with the Legacy of Hope organization, you first write letters to all of the recipients. And it's of course their choice to respond back. And all things go through Legacy until everybody is in agreement to have that open line of communication. And for 9 long months, I asked God, why? Why Corrigan? And after 9 long months, he answered that question with a letter in the mail. And that letter was from a very special family. And the mother wanted to tell me a little bit about her son that received Corrigan's heart. He was from the Democratic Republic of Congo in Central Africa. He lived in a very poor village in the mountains, very little resources, and he had became very sick. Both of his parents had died of a young age, had drowned in the lake there close to his village. So he was being raised by his aunt, which was his mother's sister. She was a teenager. And he became very sick. And what they had in their village was witch doctors. And they tried everything of their knowledge to try to heal him. And he still bears the scars on his chest and back from those attempts to save his life. And after multiple attempts, they said that there was no chance for him to survive. Well, the aunt wouldn't accept that. So she came and took him. She scaled a mountain and went down to that lake that is 30 miles wide and stole a dugout canoe. She paddled them across that lake and scaled another mountain up into the side of Rwanda. And she made it to the local hospital there and passed him off to a surgeon, which was actually a medical missionary. And his family was there as well and with him. And he actually did the surgeries on Destin, and which was a total of 4, and which ultimately saved his life. Now, the aunt continued to make that trip to check on him, but ultimately asked them if they would consider adopting him. Well, he had spent 18 months in that hospital, and they already felt like that he was theirs. They had bonded with the child. He was 3 years old. And when the surgeries began, he was just a small baby. And so, by the grace of God, they were able to adopt him. And they moved back stateside. They had served 3 years in Rwanda and 3 years in Kenya, and then moved stateside. And he had illnesses, and limitations with the heart condition. But when he turned 15, I believe it was, he got sick, probably with the flu, something of that. But he woke his parents up that night and said, "I hate to wake y'all, but I feel like I'm dying." And so they, of course, immediately rushed him to the hospital, and the surgeons agreed, yes, he is dying. And so they actually ended up putting in an artificial heart pump, which would buy him some time until he could be put on the transplant list. And with them being in the medical field, they thought that he would be on the list at least 6 months minimum, because it's a very long process, and there's a lot of people on the transplant list. And so he stayed with the pump for several months. He went through all the testing that you have to go through to be matched. And as soon as he was placed on the transplant list, the very next day, they got a call and said that they found they could not explain it. Science can't explain it. Our bodies were not made to be a perfect match for anyone, especially not the heart. But they had found the perfect match for Destin, and that was Corgan. And she said, what is the likelihood of a child from Central Africa having found a perfect match from a Southern Alabama boy? And
There
but
is
that
no
was my
explanation
Corgan.
on that one.
It's not. It's all God. Science, the surgeons could not explain it. When they did the heart transplant surgery, there was 0 markers for rejection. Most, the anti-rejection drugs are for people to keep them from rejecting that organ. And he has 0 markers showing that he would, and he just had his annual testing, and again, 0 markers for rejection. It was a perfect match. And I told Linda, his mom, I said, God answered my question. Not that I like the answer, but in my heart, I feel like her family adopted Destin to give him a wonderful life. And Corrigan gave him his heart so that he could live it. And that was Corgan's destiny. So
How do you carry the agonizing grief of losing your son and the absolute joy that he saved someone's life? Like, that's such polar opposite, such, a high and a low at the same time, and, how do you carry that?
well, I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes the grief takes over. Um, but his story was so profound and so touching, and I know that it's God's all in it. Um,
Mhm.
but my family is one reason I get up every day. Um, and I'm gonna tell you, it's very humbling. Sean and I have really involved ourselves in the organization of Legacy of Hope, and it's very humbling when you get so wrapped up in your grief. But when you're sitting in an auditorium or on the grounds of UAB, surrounded by hundreds, possibly thousands of people that are walking in the very same shoes that you are, you don't feel so alone. And you see all the donor recipients and their families there. So, so grateful for being given the gift of life and bonding with these families. And it's now like they have an extended family. And Linda, Destin's mom, said to Sean and I, it's kind of like we share Destin now.
Hmm.
So we have a new 16-year-old boy, and we will be as much part of his life as God will allow.
Mhm.
And we look forward to meeting him really soon. And um, we have not heard from the recipients as of yet for the kidneys and the liver. And we're working on the one that was able to see for the very first time, thanks to Corgan's gift.
Oh, that's
So,
amazing.
so we are looking very forward to meeting these people and forming relationships with them and
Well,
telling them about Corgan and Corgan's story.
well, you made a profound statement when you were talking about how humbling it was to be up there at UAB because we do get wrapped up in our own grief.
Mm.
And I guess I haven't really thought about that sometimes we can get like that, but then God allows us to go and see you're not alone, which helps you walk through that. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but that just really kind of hit me a lot that it's easy just to sit by yourself instead
Exactly.
of
Mhm.
trying to walk through it. I don't know if
Mhm.
I'm trying to make sense because that's what we are learning about choosing joy through this season, and it's not something that's easy. It's I'm seeing that you have to purposely go out and seek it.
Mhm.
Does
Mhm.
that right? Am I thinking
Mhm.
right?
Well, I think a part of that is because we have got it, or I shouldn't say we, what I am learning from joy is of the Lord. Happiness is in our circumstances.
Mm.
And so a lot of times I feel when I seek joy, I'm actually seeking the Lord because that's where the joy comes from. And I get caught up a lot of times in the circumstances, the material things, the things that are tactile that I can see and touch and hear. Um, that I often forget that there's this whole thing. God is this whole thing that has this plan that I can't see or touch or feel, And
Yes.
so for me, I think that when life gets like that, grief comes at you. Sometimes it's like standing at the shore of the ocean. It's just like little small waves. You feel the sand loosening under your feet and you feel the waves hit your legs, but you're steady. But then sometimes it's almost like a tsunami where the wave just overtakes you. And my question for you is, how are you navigating those types of days where the grief is just like a tsunami? Like, what advice do you have on those days to search for the joy, to search for the Lord versus just hiding in the bed and covering your head and saying, I'm not participating anymore? Because that would be the easy thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. Um, and I'm gonna tell you, it's like I said, it's hard not to give in to the grief. We're coming up on a year, but for Sean and I, it feels like it was last week
Mhm.
because it feels like the day we lost him, it's hard to explain, but it's like your life as a parent, it just kind of stops, or you see life passing by, but you're just at a standstill. Um, but you know, here lately, I have found a lot of peace into diving into the Word of God. I'm currently doing a beautiful year in the Bible women's study, and all I can say is I'm really holding steadfast to that promise that I was given that I'm going to see him again. So, um, that brings me peace. And honestly, if anybody that knows Corrigan, he would not be happy with me if I just got in the bed and I covered up my head. He would, and I live every day now to honor him. Um,
Mhm.
I have two women that I'm so lucky to be able to call my friends, great women of faith, and they've been here since day one. Um, and they both lost children. Actually, one lost two, and they carry theirself with such grace. And I want to be like that. And I hope to be like that someday for someone else that needs it, just like I did. Um, so I guess that's just my purpose for as long as God keeps me here. Um,
As you were talking about life stopping, I was sharing with Lisa that the closest that I can think of for myself was I went with our dad to the doctor the day the doctor told him our dad had cancer, and he was like, "There's nothing we can do. Go home and enjoy the time you have." And it was a weird thing to experience. And then I was telling Lisa, I remember walking from the doctor's office to the car at UAB, and people are just bustling around and they're just
mhm,
going on about their doctor's appointments. And I remember thinking to myself, like, my whole world just changed, and just the few words of a man, and you don't even care. You don't, which of course they wouldn't. They didn't know us, but it was like in that moment, I just wanted to scream, does the world not know what you're losing?
mhm.
And I think about that as a mom. Like, I'm sure you've had those moments where you just want to scream to people, like, you don't know what the world has lost, and it
Exactly.
it's hard not to. I've not lost a child, but I would think it would be so hard to not stay in that anger, and
Mhm.
which is exactly where Satan would want us to stay. It is in that anger, and I know it's got to be hard, and it's a choice. I've heard you
Mm.
say that several times. It's just a choice that you're like, I'm not staying there. Because even though this happened, God is still good. That's what I'm hearing you say over and over, because only a good God could make a perfect heart in Alabama for a boy from Africa. Only
Mm.
God can orchestrate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, relating to that story about your dad, I was in Hobby Lobby, um, and I was with my best friend. She's the best, and people were shopping, buying gifts, and I just got caught up in the anger. Um, because what was I doing? I was shopping for flowers to put in my son's grave. So I was having a really bad moment in a store, and I get very overwhelmed now. And Hobby Lobby being known for them playing gospel music, our song came on. The song that's very special to Sean and I, and that we had played at Corrigan's funeral, was The Goodness of God. So, in my moment of my breakdown between anger and grief and sadness, all at the same time, that played over the loudspeaker. And I guess he was just reminding me that it's okay, but not to stay in it. It's okay to be okay. I'm human. I'm going to be angry, and I'm going to be really sad. But we can't stay in that place. Um, so I just try to put one foot in front of the other and do the best I can every day.
Because, like you said, it's the hope. You have the hope that he is with our Savior, and you have the hope that you're going to see him again. And that's how I do not see how people make it through this world without him, because, it's like he's the glue that holds things together when it just don't make sense. My husband hates 3M command strips. Now, I'm going to tell you, them suckers won't hold a painting on my wall, but they'll rip some sheetrock
Sheetrock.
down. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
But my husband told me not to put it up, and I didn't listen, and I did. And anyway, I ripped some sheetrock down, and we had to have it fixed. But I thought to myself in that moment, when it was just all on the floor, I thought, you know what, Lori, sometimes your faith is just like that, because you're hanging on to the wrong thing. The command strip is supposed to stick to the wall and hold the painting up, but for some reason in my house, it just all falls to the ground. And I just correlate that to my life, because I often get on the wrong path, and it would be so easy for you um through Corrigan's death to have gotten to be clinging to the wrong thing, to be clinging to the anger, to cling to the grief and all that. But it's like what I'm hearing you say is the answer to it is you cling to God, and because he makes what don't make sense okay in a weird way. And I know that sounds crazy for someone that doesn't follow God. How does God make it okay? And it's just coming to a place of acceptance that this side of heaven I'm never going to understand, but I have a hope that it's all worked out.
And the timing is also perfect, because you said it was 9 months when you got the letter from them. And, if you would have gotten it earlier, it might not have had the same effect, because you had a journey to walk through before you got this letter. So you just see the fingerprints of God, all throughout this, everything. And it just goes to show me that where I love to control things and have everything in order, I have nothing in order when you hear the story. When you
Mm-mm.
see how God placed people all along, and this young boy now is in America with a perfect heart match, it just I have nothing under control. No control whatsoever. And I think that's a little humbling to realize when I think of your story. Um I don't know. And you were talking about that you have friends and you hope that you can be like that to help someone else, and because we're told to carry each other's burdens, and whatever we go through you can help somebody else later. But I struggle with what to say, what not to say, or I'm afraid to say the wrong thing, and or whatever. W- and I guess my question to you would be, what is something that just made a difference, I guess, to say, or give us advice to say, to help somebody else that's walking through a grief, whatever the grief is, to where it doesn't diminish, like what you were talking about earlier, but also doesn't make it sound like, oh, it's just a band-aid, everything's gonna be okay.
Well, I guess my advice to others would be not to avoid not talking to someone because they're afraid of not knowing what to say or saying the wrong thing, making things worse. Because any parent's fear is that their child will be forgotten. Okay, so any
Mm,
acknowledgement, whether it's just sitting with them, telling a story about Corrigan, um, because that lets me know that he was important enough for you to remember him because they deserve to be remembered. So, my best advice would be it hurts worse when you don't say anything at all. Even
Oh,
if it's just a
mm,
hug or I'm thinking about you, you're acknowledging my child. And that means more than anything. So I
mm,
would just say it really does that family member's heart really good to know that they were important enough for you to stop and give me a moment, an acknowledgement that he's still being remembered.
okay.
Well, if you could, to kind of wrap up everything we talked about, if you if you could say one thing to Corgan today as to the legacy he's left behind, um, what would you say to him? I think about how so many times we don't realize the impact we make on people's lives. And Corgan made such a selfless decision when he chose to be an organ donor. And never knowing that he was a perfect match. When he signed that, when he on his license, he had no clue that he was a perfect match for this young boy. And so what would you say to him, or what would you say to someone else that maybe is struggling with organ donation, or maybe should they do it or not do it? Because I feel like Corgan's story, there's just joy all over it, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all. I see pictures of him, and I recently saw a picture you posted where I believe you had taken one of his shirts and made it into a dress, and I thought that is he's everywhere, and you'll never know what me seeing that did to my heart. And so I see such a legacy he left, and if you could just even tell him, what would you say to him?
I would just want him to know how very special he is. and how so very proud that we are. We knew he would do big things, but the impact that he has had on so many people in this community. Legacy came up and met us, asked us to join them at the Clark County Courthouse for Raise the Flag because our area was actually, Little Clark County was actually recognized because due to Corrigan and his story has reached so many people that just at the Clark County Courthouse, they had, since his death, in excess of 300 people that came and changed their license to become a donor.
Wow.
So they asked
Wow.
us to come up there, and they had a very special ceremony where Sean and I got to raise the donor flag at the Clark County Courthouse. So he's just making big waves everywhere. I mean, he's made a big impact on this world in 23 years. He really has.
Wow. It's definitely true that God's plans, God can do anything, and his plan cannot be stopped. And I see that through Corgan's story and then your story of walking through as his mom, that the legacy you are leaving behind is one of grace and one of how to get up and choose joy every day. Thank you for joining us today. May you choose joy as you walk through the seasons of your life. And don't forget to check us out at therecoveringpreacherskids.com.